Welcome to Tech Topics brought to you by Cybervenger. We help keep small businesses stay protected and compliant with cutting-edge cybersecurity and IT solutions.
Hello everyone, my name's Andy. I'm the managing consultant for Cybervenger. Welcome to our video on cybersecurity for the solo entrepreneur. In this video, we're going to help out folks that I think are kind of left behind in the cybersecurity business. All kinds of companies out there that can help make your business more secure, but they tend to be priced a little bit out of reach for new entrepreneurs, for single entrepreneur businesses, the real small guy and gal just trying to get started. So what can you do? Well, we're going to talk about that in the video. We're going to talk about actual practical tips that you can do to secure your business or even your home if you're a home user, and what you need to look for, where you should be educating yourself. Where's a good use of your time? I don't expect every entrepreneur out there to become a cybersecurity expert, but everyone should have a certain basic understanding. We're going to talk about what you should learn, what to look forward to there. We're also going to talk about kind of trends in cybersecurity, who the bad guys are and what they're after. I think that's really key to protecting yourself is in developing a good mindset. You have to understand the problem if you're going to solve it, right? It's true of any aspect of business. So we're going to talk about small folks and why that cybersecurity is so important for them. First, I want to dispel a myth. A lot of individuals out there with their home networks or with their small consulting practices, like one or two people, they tend to think, well, I'm a nobody. We're so small. Who's going to bother going after us? There's a lot bigger fish to go after. That's true. There's certainly bigger fish, but bigger fish have bigger teeth. The little guy is actually a prime target for attackers because they're easy prey. And my job in this video is to make sure that you and your company are not easy prey. And I'll talk about what they can exploit and what they can use and take advantage of with a single person and a single computer, a single internet connection can actually be very valuable, particularly when combined with lots of people. So the first thing you have to understand is you don't usually have a individual brainy hacker like they show on movies and TV sitting there pounding away at your connection. It's usually a bot. It's a piece of software running in the background trying to break into not just you, but thousands of computers, just scouring the internet, looking for a weakness anywhere. And if you happen to have one of those weaknesses, they can get into your computer, control, and use it for a number of things. First, they can keep your data from you and then charge you a ransom to get it back. Your data may not be important, but it's important to you, otherwise you wouldn't have it. Who knows how much you'll pay? They're going to find out, right? We'll teach you how to stop that. And data is also important to them sometimes. Very simple, innocuous thing. Your customer lists could be sold to other companies, or they could do reputational threats. A lot of big trend that's going on today is taking your data, removing it from your system. It's called the data exfiltration. You take data away from somebody, you copy it, and they use that data in nefarious purposes. You got to be a little creative. It's important to understand that cybersecurity is a philosophy. It's about how you do your business. It's a set of business practices and a mindset. It's not a product. You can't just run out and go buy a product. Now, we're going to recommend some products that are tools that help you build your cybersecurity capabilities, but it's really more about having a mindset that matters. And that's what we're talking about in this video. We're going to teach you how to do that, teach you how to think about cybersecurity so you can put yourself in a good, well-protected position. Nothing is going to make you invulnerable, but it's kind of like with car theft, right? You still lock your doors. Anybody can steal a car, even if you lock doors. But if you lock your doors, it's a lot easier to protect yourself than if you just leave them open. Maybe you can get an alarm. Maybe you park in a garage. Nothing's bulletproof, but we all take these steps to protect our property. We should take steps to protect our data as well. And not just our data, but our customers' data. Think about a doctor's office. A lot of confidential information in there that we don't want leaked out. And a lot of times the bad guys will know this, and they will threaten to disclose this information to inappropriate places. They could send embarrassing emails to your customers. They could send people's private information. Imagine a therapist's office. What do you do with therapy data? Well, it's not particularly useful, but if you threaten to disclose people's mental health issues to their employers, other places, that have to be very, very embarrassing indeed, and it causes people to pay ransom. And that makes money. Because it makes money, it tends to grow. That sort of thing is expanding. Let's talk about steps on how to protect particularly sensitive data, how to think about what is sensitive data, what's more and less sensitive, and how to protect it appropriately. You can't run your entire business locked down like Fort Knox. You got to pick and choose what you protect with more emphasis. Now, obviously, you want to take good practices everywhere, but some things you really want to protect more. If you're an accountant, you definitely want to protect your customers' data more than, say, I don't know, maybe your marketing strategies or even your business plans. It'd be bad enough if your business plans got exposed, but how many different business plans could you have versus what about your bank information for your customers that could leave you exposed to lawsuits and that sort of thing. So you want to start thinking about segregating data. We'll get more into that as we go further on. So we'll flip over here. What is cybersecurity? Well, basically anything that is data, any kind of information at all, is something that could be destroyed. It could be locked out and held for ransom. That could be disclosed to somebody. Any kind of data at all has some value, and we want to protect it from other people from being able to access it. That is essentially cybersecurity and integrity. Imagine again, you have an accounting system, and someone gets in and starts messing with the accounting data because I don't know, maybe they're malicious or perhaps they're trying to delete an invoice so they don't have to pay it. And that's integrity. So just a little terminology. You've got disclosure, denial of service, data integrity, and of course ransomware. Malware is a method of how you get attacked. Malware is any piece of software that does a bad thing, hence the term mal. Malware can be viruses. Those are common. Viruses are defended against by an antivirus software. But antivirus, the way it works, is it will keep a massive, truly massive list of all the known viruses out there. And these are pieces of code that it can recognize. Antivirus works by recognizing a bad thing and removing it. But the problem is the bad guys can create new malware so fast, it's always a leapfrog. Virus comes out, bad things happen, antivirus catches on, they make an antidote, and then they block it, right? There's another type of software out there called EDR, or electronic detection, endpoint detection and response. It's kind of like antivirus, but the next generation therein. So it's not just a newer version of a particular software, it's a different type of thing. So you want EDR because EDR can look for patterns and suspicious behavior. And generally, it will block things that it doesn't recognize rather than block things that it does, if you follow. It whitelists, and it takes a certain security philosophy. This is what I'm talking about, that mindset. You should always have a mindset of deny by default and grant only by exception. So the list of things that you allow to happen should be small, and a list of things that you don't allow to happen, effectively infinite. It's a philosophy. It's not a technical thing. It's something average people can keep in their mind. And that applies different places. So that's your philosophy. You want to deny by default. EDR kind of does that. It'll deny. It won't let your computer do things if it doesn't recognize it as benign. It'll use logic and AI to try and catch things rather than a recognized list. And that's why it's better. It's the only way to really keep up with today's threat. So yeah, EDR, it's not just hype. I think it's worth the money. There's a lot of different products. SentinelOne is a good one we use. Sophos has Intercept X. That's a great product. There's a lot of them out there. So you want to start doing some research on EDR. If you do hire an IT person, you want to talk to them about EDR. Most everybody has some product that they work with they can offer for you. Moving on beyond malware, we have phishing and social engineering. Social engineering is the good old con job. It's just tricking people into revealing information. You can trick people into revealing their passwords. So very common threats are someone will send you an email saying, hey, what's up with this invoice? And there'll be an invoice attached. And then you click on it, but it's a link to a Google Drive. Okay, well, you use Google Drive. Why is it asking for my password again? So you type in your password. That's where they get you. You're not typing your password into Google. You clicked on a link that looks like Google, and instead of logging in, all you're doing is writing down your password for the bad guy. Now, I can go in depth and detail about how the bad guys, threat actors, cybersecurity hackers, pick your name, how the bad guys get your password. But the passwords are surprisingly easy to come across. So you want another thing you want to think about is you want to assume that eventually you're going to be breached. Someone's going to break in. Someone's going to get past one layer of security. And this is why you want layers of security. And this is why you want to do things like separate your data. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Data breach is just any time someone manages to get into your computer. If they got full control of your computer, if they got partial control enough where they could reach data, that is an event that happens. It's out of normal. It's not just someone trying, it's someone succeeds. And data breaches are a legal thing, meaning that there are certain requirements depending on your requirements as a business. You have to disclose this. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then finally, denial of service attack. Denial of service attack is not as bad, in my opinion, because data didn't get out. Your systems are still there. You just can't use them right now because you're being flooded with traffic or some similar event. The goal is to stop you from being able to use your systems. A lot of times it'll be followed up with a ransomware demand. Maybe not. Maybe they're just threat actors out there trying to do bad stuff. You got to understand who these folks are. Bad actors, the bad guys could be all kinds of people. A lot of times the bad guy isn't someone looking just to make money. A lot of times the bad guy is a foreign government looking to achieve a political objective. And they do that by knocking out people's systems or showing a vulnerability or whatever they're trying to do. So you may be the victim and of someone who's not even making money at this, but they got the power and authority of an entire state government behind them. They got those kind of facilities and those means for attacking, and that's what you're defending against. That can be tricky. So it's good to know who it is that's attacking, what they might want. They might want to simply just take you down for no reason other than they have orders from their government. Hey, attack this industry. Cause havoc. Okay. They go forth and do that. So that little bit of a mindset change that a lot of people don't understand is it's a thing, right? Moving on here. Okay, so real world examples of some of the things that I've personally seen in my career and in our business that we've handled. First one is ransomware. Very common. You probably heard it in the news. At this point, ransomware is a conventional attack. It's been done long enough now where it's a known quantity. We had a ransomware, a company who had gotten hit with ransomware come to us afterwards. They'd already been hit when we made the introduction, and we were trying to help them recover. So it turns out the previous IT people didn't do very good backups. You can protect against ransomware if you have solid backups, but there's a way to do that. There's a right way and a wrong way to do backups. Actually, there's plenty of wrong ways, but there's only really one right way. If you don't do it the correct way, you're going to be vulnerable to ransomware. Ransomware locks up your data. You can't get to it. The bad guy doesn't have access to it either, traditionally. But you can't get to it now. But it's done in a reversible way. They didn't delete your data. They encrypted it. They scrambled it. Think those, Cracker Jack box decoder rings. All the data is, changed, but can be reversed if you got the encoding sheet. You've got the keys, they call it. So they will charge you ransom. You pay the ransom, you get the keys. In this particular case, we had no backups, and it was vital data they could not live without. So we paid the guy paid the ransom, unfortunately. The ransom was about $10,000. A lot of money for a little doctor's office. It was a husband and wife team and a part-time doctor. And they'd been in the business for some 30-odd years. They had probably 20,000 records, people's, different patients they've seen over the years, at least once. And that's a large number of people. Well, that came into play. And that's what I mean by if you think about being breached, how would you respond? How can you improve your defenses after a breach? Assume that you're going to get breached. What ended up happening is they had the logging necessary to prove that the data was only encrypted and not exfiltrated, meaning the bad guy never got a copy of the data. This is huge because the ransom to get the data back was $10,000. They had 20,000 patients in their record. A stamp for an envelope is about 50 cents. Then you've got printing the letter, the cost of the envelope, putting it in, mailing it all off. You got to figure about $1 an envelope to mail, right? They would have legally, because they're a doctor's office, under HIPAA, we'll talk about compliance in a minute, that this is a compliance thing, they would have had to mail off $20,000 worth of letters. So the ransom was only $10,000. My fees were probably less than that, but definitely less than that. But the breach notification would have cost them $20,000. And if they had prepared to be breached, they could have, in their legal system, in their onboarding documents, as their patients sign, they could have elected to have their patients sign a document that said, you allow us to notify you by email. And then they could avoid that entire thing altogether. So having the right mindset, being prepared to recover from a breach is probably just as important as stopping the breach in the first place. And this is a really good example of that. Another real common example is, I have a number of customers. It's kind of a common thing to have your email breached. People are like, okay, well, it's my email. I got boring stuff in there. You read all what you want. Again, that's kind of a bad attitude because email is very critical, because if you ever forget your password for something, trying to get an account. What's the first thing I do? Oh, click forgot password. What does that forgot password link do? It sends you an email. The bad guys have access to your email. They probably have seen notifications from all the services you use. Maybe use QuickBooks Online. Maybe use appointment setting software. Maybe use, whatever online. And, all those emails that come in, they can, get access to all those services by simply sending off a request to reset the password, and I can get in that way. And there's a lot of ways you can get into someone's email. Fortunately, there's also a very easy defense that blocks 98% of the issues with, it does a huge, big difference. And that is two-factor authentication. So if you have your cell phone and you want to protect someone logging into your email, one of the most free thing, usually free, you go get Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator or some similar app, and you put a little app on your phone. And when you log in, it gives you a little code, and you have to type the code in order to continue to log in. The way that works is you have a second factor to log in. So even if the bad guy gets your password, and as I said, there's a lot of ways that can happen. Even if they get your password, they still can't get in because they don't have your phone. Now, it's not undefeatable, it's not invincible, but it's definitely a much, much harder target when you do this. And it's almost always free. Almost every cloud service I can think of offers two-factor, at least as an option. To kind of prove my point how important this is, Microsoft 365 recently is forcing everyone to do two-factor authentication. I think this is great. I think everybody should do that for services like this. So you actually have to have two-factor authentication if you've got Office 365 now. And then last thing, there is a breach of social media accounts. Those are very difficult to recover from. In fact, we get a lot of requests in saying, hey, our Facebook page was hacked. Hey, our Instagram was taken down. Hey, so-and-so social media, we got to get back in. Can you help us? And we say, no, we can't. This is prevention worth ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. It doesn't cut it. It's way worse than that. Most of these social media companies, and I don't want to single anybody out, they're not very good at customer service. They're not very helpful. In fact, they have demonstrated a significant amount of apathy towards the plight of their own users. An individual user just isn't worth that much to them. Social media companies make their money when they have millions of users to sell to advertisers. So if a tiny fraction of them get their account breached, well, they're going to probably create a new account anyway. What do they care? They don't spend the money on having a help desk team, a cybersecurity team, willing to help individual users who get breached. No greater story is this than Leela Loves Macaroons. They are a little shop in Park Ridge. They were on the news. They were on WGN. They were in other places. Their Instagram account got hacked, and they never got any help from Instagram at all. And the bad guys ended up, they demanded a ransom. We have your account. Pay us this, or we're going to delete your account. Good for Leela Loves. They refused to pay ransom. That's very important because every time these bad guys make money, you're paying them to hurt somebody else, and they're going to do that job. Let me tell you, you don't want to reward these people financially. That's why it happened. You're getting attacked because somebody else paid them to, effectively, right? So you always want to be in a position where you can recover. Social media, two-factor is an option. Well, what's someone going to do with my social media account? Now you know. They're going to delete it. In the case of Leela Loves, they were getting some 85% of their business from their Instagram social following, and they're still in business over a year later, and they are trying to slowly rebuild their marketing campaigns. But that's something to think about. With social media, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. That's a philosophy you can learn. Never have all your eggs in one basket. Always have a backup plan. This is something you could do. You don't need a tech to tell you this. Well, I mean, I'm telling you this now, but once you know, you can continue that philosophy. So if you have a social media account and you're counting on that to build your business, have some redundancy there, and have two-factor on your passwords, and treat it like a precious commodity because it is. And also remember, you don't control it. You're giving up control to the social media company. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? Maybe they just change the algorithm. Now business just stops showing up. That happens too. Whole other topic for discussion in a later time, but you get the idea of what you need to protect and things that we've seen in the real world, and hopefully some of the steps that you can take to protect yourself. So how do you identify where you're weak? Maybe you didn't think about the social media thing. Maybe you didn't realize, I didn't think email was that big a deal. Where can you find vulnerabilities? There are a lot of vulnerabilities. So your website is a big vulnerability. If somebody gets into your website, they can put malware on your website, and then all your customers that go there can get infected. So you need to protect that. Again, two-factor is a good start, making sure that you're dealing with a web hosting provider that's regularly updating and patching and protecting your systems. Your social media profiles, we just talked about. SaaS applications, like if you're using QuickBooks in the cloud or like an appointment setting software or anything online, maybe using Monday.com or, use two-factor for everybody. Make it part of your company policy. And your locally stored files, of course, if you got things on your laptop, or if you're storing your files in Google or Dropbox, these are all potential vulnerabilities. You want to think about what kind of data you put up there and how vulnerable is it. If it's a cloud system that you have no control over, you may want to think twice about putting client data up there, like the really sensitive stuff, social security numbers. If you're a therapist, people's personal experiences, medical files, you might want to keep out of there. I don't think I have to explain how sensitive that could be if that got disclosed. Maybe you want to keep it in a system in-house, or maybe make sure that you vet the company you're using. Talk to them about their cybersecurity practices. Find out their recommendations for what you could be doing. Talk to them. A lot of times you can get good security advice from the very vendor itself. And if you don't, maybe think about another vendor. Companies these days are pushing their cybersecurity credentials and what they're doing as a selling point, and you should be open to be sold on that because you want companies that are secure. Another story, personal story here. So I got a notification. We use LifeLock to warn us if like our credit was hacked or anything like that. And it's a decent service. I recommend it to other people to try it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a good defense to have. And they notify us that some company I had never heard of before was breached and our data was released. Fortunately, it's data like name and address. I mean, that's bad. I don't want that out there, but it's not, my social security number was not in there. But the way it got breached, and the reason I didn't recognize the company, it was another company I do recognize uses them as their appointment setting software. Now, legally, the company I'm doing business with was probably notified by these guys that they were breached, and they should have notified me because the company I use is technically breached because the software they use where they put their client data was breached. You can be third-hand breach. If you get a notification from somebody, you may have to pass that notification on to your own customers, disclosing exactly what was and what was not breached. Usually involving some legal fees there. So you want to be mindful of what you put up online. Cloud could be great, but it does have its pitfalls and challenges, and that's something to think about. And again, a lot of this, I know I could go on for hours about what to do in the details. I'm trying to wet your whistle to think about, okay, what should I be thinking about? What questions should I be asking? Who you were asking those questions to, of course, YouTube videos, right? We can answer some of that stuff. But just, friends, and if you're in a networking group and you're talking to people, asking those kinds of questions, ask what other entrepreneurs are doing to protect themselves. You can learn a lot peer-to-peer as well. And you take notes. And I know it's a lot to keep track of. You're already doing this with, if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably doing this with legal obligations. Oh, hey, what are you doing for HR issues? Hey, what are you doing for collections? And there's so many hats to wear on one single head. You're running out of headspace, right? So I'm realizing we're asking you to carve out even more time that you basically don't have. But getting your business shut down can put you out of business very quickly from these. There's a lot of ways you could see how that can happen. Not only that, but even if they don't target you when you're small, as you get bigger, it gets very difficult to add the philosophy of protecting data and thinking about what kind of data you have, separating your marketing data from your customer private confidential data. Things about what it is, right? Social security numbers need to be stored in less places. And also on identifying vulnerabilities, there is the concept of attack surface. Everything you have, everything you use is a new point that a bad guy could go after. Think of a castle. Think of a castle with one big gate in front. You've got thick walls all the way around. The bad guy can't really get in very easily. They're not going to try because the wall is not worth the energy and time. But that front gate, that opens and closes. Maybe they could trick your guards. Maybe they could bribe your guards. Maybe they can sneak in behind, your forces walking in. Whatever. This is just an analogy. It's an entry point. That's the attack surface. Now, what if you have more than one door? Now you have more attack surfaces. You need more guards to guard it, and it's harder. It's more difficult to keep track of. It's more opportunities for a bad guy to get in. Your IT is the same way. Every time you sign up for a new application online, the data you put there is vulnerable. Now, if you're storing, meeting scheduling stuff for your own staff, it's not as bad as if you're putting personal confidential information like social security numbers and salary information, things like that. So you could go ahead and use less confidential data, a little looser, use more services, because if you have more attack surfaces and that gets compromised, it's not as painful, not hard to recover from. If you have sensitive stuff, you should think twice about where you're putting that sensitive data. Maybe try to have it only in one spot. You make a company policy from the very beginning that confidential client information doesn't go on your file storage. It only goes in your line of business application, that one place. And you want to make sure that application is updated regularly, that you're following the vendor's best practices for security. You chose a vendor that is aware of and cares about security. Not every vendor does. I've always been surprised about how lax some application vendors are out there. It really amazes me. Security is such a big thing and growing, and your business runs out of these core apps. If you have an enterprise resource planning application, if you're a little manufacturer and you got a little one like E2 or something, or 4D or any of these little companies, I'm not saying they're bad at security. I'm just saying applications like this, some of them are not very good. Some of them are great. You've got to ask questions. So that's kind of something to point you into to continue to learn more on. Physical vulnerabilities. What does breaking through that castle door look like? Well, your devices all have your smartphones, your computers, your Internet of Things devices. Internet of Things devices, think like a Ring Central camera. It's just a camera in our mind normally because we use it like a camera, but it's actually a computer. It talks over the network. It's a networked computer. If you look under the hood, it's a computer. Even though we're looking at it, we see a camera. Any device that you connect to the internet is essentially a computer underneath it all, and therefore can be compromised. So you want to separate that as much as you can. As an IT technician, I can think of a lot of ways to separate it that an end user might not. At some point, as a solopreneur even, you're going to probably have to hire an IT guy or gal to come up and set up equipment. Ask them, hey, this internet thing, how can I separate it? How can I keep that away from the rest of my confidential stuff? I got stuff that's really critical to protect and the stuff that obviously I want to protect, but it's not as bad. How do I, separate the two? And a lot of times you'll get some good information. Sometimes you won't. If you don't, keep asking around. Find other professionals that understand security and can help educate you. Another common one I see is wireless. Wireless is very convenient. Nobody wants to run a cable everywhere. I get that. But you want to separate your wireless as well. You want a wireless that has guest access, meaning you can get on and you get to the internet, but you cannot get to the other private computers. So if you have a team of 3 people and you have a little tiny network attached storage where all your files are at, you don't want someone walking in your office, a customer, being able to reach that. Oh, hey, can I get on? Can I get your Wi-Fi password? Sure. Go ahead and check your email, get your financial planner. Oh, I got my laptop. Can I get your Wi-Fi? Can I go so I can go online and download my bank statements so we can help me with my financial plan? Financial planners, well, yeah, of course. I want to see your bank statements. We can help do the plan for you. You want to have a guest wireless that you can give to them that doesn't give them access to your data. That's absolutely vital. And it's not particularly expensive to do this. This is very basic stuff. Almost every access point I know of usually has a guest wireless option of some kind. So these are questions to ask your IT department, even though I don't really necessarily expect the end user, you, the solopreneur, to be able to set that up yourself. When you do bring someone in, you can ask them that. And if they don't know, push them a little. Maybe find someone that does. Or bring a security professional just for that piece and go back to your little hole-in-the-wall IT company that may be more affordable for the daily stuff. And vulnerabilities, brute force password hacking. So this is another way people get passwords. We talked a little bit about you being tricked into typing in your password. That's one way. There's a lot of ways. Brute force password is interesting because a lot of people don't think about this. It's kind of an oldie but a goodie, if you will. Goodie if you're the bad guy trying to get in. But you don't care who you crack, who you break into when you're a bad guy. You just want to get in somewhere. Cybersecurity is not as targeted as people think it is. Sometimes it can be, of course. But especially with the small fish, you're just one of a million targets. And the bad guys can go buy a list of email addresses out there for cheap and they could buy 10 million email addresses. And email addresses are usually the username people use all kinds of services online. You sign up for Amazon, you use your email address. Sign up for Google, you use an email address. Sign up for QuickBooks, an email address. It goes on and on and on. Register your domain name. Protect your domain name, folks. Two-factor in that account. And you go to register.com, two-factor. Like I said, two-factor everything, especially if it's in the cloud. But they could take that email address and they can take one password, some stupid password like password, P at symbol $, W0RD. A lot of people use that password. I bet you someone watching the video goes, whoa, how do you know my password? Because too many people use it, that's why. Don't ever use it. Never use the word password in your password. And a password should be long. We'll talk about good passwords in a minute. But you can take that random password and you can guess that password as the password for 10 million different email addresses at all kinds of different services. And you're going to fail 99.999% of the time. But you're going to get it somewhere eventually. And if that password doesn't work, you go to the next one and the next one and the next one. A lot of times, what'll even happen is the bad guys, when they manage to breach a password, sometimes they actually crack the whole holy grail. And they get a list of passwords for every account in a company. And they take these passwords and they sell them. In fact, computer researchers will do that sometimes. They'll publish the top 10 most commonly used passwords. Don't use those passwords. But the idea is it's more guessable than you might think, and just grunt work trying over and over again. That's how that attack works. I think it's important for people to understand that brute force password cracking is a thing, and it's really difficult to defend against. In the old days, you would take one user account and you'd try a bunch of passwords in a row. That's easy. X number of guessed passwords, you disable the account. It's called intruder lockout, and that worked. But now they flip that on its head, and now you try 10 million accounts with the same password, and then go to the next password and the next password. A day later, you're back to so you can go through 10 million accounts. Okay, that takes like 5 hours, and then the next password takes 5 hours. By the time you get three wrong passwords in a row, it's like 5 days have passed. And then the timeout reset. So enough on that. Moving on, you want to look at your software and application security. You want to make sure that not only are you updating your Windows operating system, are you updating the firmware on your firewalls? Are you updating your antivirus software? Are you updating your applications? You want to update your applications as well. That's a lot of vulnerabilities. If you have a piece of software out there that you use, let's say, I don't know, you're a police department and you have a ticketing software that handles tickets, deals with parking tickets. If that's out of date, someone could break into that thing using that vulnerability. If you have, if you are running a manufacturing company, you got a small, client tracking ERP system, and that's out of date, it could be vulnerable. It doesn't matter what application you're using. Talk to the vendor. Always have vendor support. That's usually worth the money, not just for troubleshooting, but to make sure they get current updates, keeping the application updated. I have seen in my history a case where a customer was behind on their Windows updates, and they had good antivirus, and they were infected. And each computer that got infected spread out and infected other computers around it. Anything it could talk to got infected fast, like lightning fast. And the antivirus would catch it, remove it, and it would be reinfected by one of its peers in seconds. The only way we stop the infection is by updating every single PC. Now, this is a long time ago. This is 20 some odd years ago I experienced this. That's back then. This is an old thing. You want to keep your company's infrastructure and assets always up to date. That's very, very important. So you want to manage that. So you want to, if you're a solo entrepreneur, you want to click on your start button and say updates and hit enter and just do what it tells you. And then think about the applications you have and always install the latest version whenever possible. That's more important than you think. It's not just a nuisance nagging you. It's a way to protect yourself, because the bad guys know what's vulnerable too. They can see the vulnerabilities. They see the patches too. And they go, oh, new patch. Time to flood the internet with bots and see if I can take advantage of that attack before people patch. So if you haven't patched your computer in 6 months, the bad guy can break in because they know how, because it's an already known issue. There's also what they call zero-day attacks, which means the bad guy figured out how to get in, but nobody has a patch for it yet. Those are much more difficult to defend against. And that's part of why you want security in layers. If you could keep people away from the thing that's vulnerable, it gives you another chance to protect yourself. And that's also why you want to assume that you're going to breach and be able to recover from and resist the damage. So Another one, excess admin rights are a big deal. You deny by default. When you hire your first employee, it's just the two of you. It's very tempting to give that person full access to your entire network drive of everything. But if they're only working a small subset of your clients, let's say you're a lawyer, and they're going to help you with X, Y, and Z clients in their cases, give them access to X, Y, and Z. Don't give them access to A, B, and C. Keep it separate. Even if you like this person, if you trust this person, you want to create a culture of security. Deny by default. This is a philosophy, not a product, right? This is how you do business. As an entrepreneur, when we build our every time I hire an employee, this is a chance to do this. We want to write down how we roll, right? We want a giant document on how we want our business operations manual, how we roll. If any of you have ever read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, I'm a big fan of that. It's a little dated, but the principles are still pretty sound, and we follow that here. But you want to do that in your own business, and you want to do that with cybersecurity. So often, it's really easy to do this in the beginning and very difficult to change later on once you have inertia. You start with a culture of security, you're going to stay with a culture of security, and you're going to be much more secure than your peers. And, a lot of times, again, I was telling you earlier, if you're getting a vendor, talk to vendors that talk about security and can answer your questions. Be that person in your business. Advertise it. Hey, we take cybersecurity service seriously. We protect your data. Imagine, and if any of you have ever done business networking, and I may offend a few financial planners, right? And I'm sorry, it's just the truth. You go to a networking group for the first time, there's going to be a financial planner there already, right? Sometimes you go to these Chamber of Commerces and there's like 5 financial planners. It's, how do you differentiate yourself when you're one of those kind of businesses? And I'm telling you, cybersecurity is a great way to do it. If you saw 3 different financial planners because you want to help planning your finances, right? And one of them said, hey, by the way, we take your cybersecurity, your data, and your bank account information, your retirement account information very seriously. We have all kinds of cybersecurity plans to protect you from outside hackers. Next time you talk to my competition, ask them what they do. We do this. You put a giant list of things in ways that you protect their data. I think that'd impress people. I think you could charge more. I think you can win business that way. So it doesn't have to be a cost center. It could be something that helps you win business. It could be a competitive differentiator. And all by just following some basic stuff, all by having a philosophy, and all by learning the latest cybersecurity trend. You can incorporate that into how you build your business and everything you do. So enough on that, moving on here. So cybersecurity hygiene, we talked about passwords. Well, we're going to more in detail now. We talked about multi-factor authentication. We talked about keeping things updated. That's all very important. With passwords, there's a great debate out there, even among security professionals, between complexity, meaning you have upper and lower case, you have numbers, you have dashes and symbols and all that stuff, versus raw length. Like, what's better, a long sentence with just letters, nothing else, or a short password with complex characters? You want to do both if you can. My advice as a solopreneur, a good medium ground to not make things too difficult and give yourself good cybersecurity. Make your password a sentence, a simple sentence. The brown fox ate the frog. I don't know. Pick something. Nothing too common. And it's a sentence. It's easy to type when it's a sentence. And you got special characters. You got spaces in there, right? Bob likes blue cheese. There you go. That's a sentence. Bob, you would capitalize first letter and proper name, put spaces in there, and put an exclamation point because, wow, he really likes blue cheese. You could remember it. You don't have to write it down. Don't write your passwords down and stick it on your keyboard or on your monitor. If there is one thing I could tell everybody, don't write your password down and stick it where the world can see it. Please stop doing that right now. If your password is under your keyboard, take it up, memorize it, throw it away. So how do you record your passwords? What's a good way to do that? It's seen as an alternative. People will put an Excel spreadsheet and they'll password protect this Excel spreadsheet. That's good. That's a good philosophy, but there's a technical weakness there. Excel, it's breakable. It's not super durable. And then somebody breaks and they got all your passwords. The tool we like to use, the free one that we recommend to our small customers, is KeePass, KeePass. It's a free tool. It's very well known. And you want to be careful with free tools. Sometimes free tools are garbage. If it's something you've never heard of before, nobody else ever recommended, you might want to stay clear of it because sometimes it can contain malware and infect you. KeePass is a good one. We like this product, been using it for years. But what it lets you do is it lets you open up a spreadsheet and keep all kinds of passwords and information in there. And when you close it, it's password protected and encrypted, meaning the bad guys can't break into it. Just like the bad guys can keep you from your data when they ransomware you, you can keep them from your data with encryption. It's an incredible tool, very powerful. KeePass uses AES 256. You don't need to know what that is. Just know that it's top-notch stuff. It's what all the compliance standards are asking for. We'll talk about compliance in just a second. So use that to manage your passwords. Multi-factor authentication, again, I've kind of beaten that horse to death here, but it makes a big difference. And I mean, I know it's annoying. I too have a list of multi-factor authentication, prompts in my authenticator that's a mile long. I actually have to use the search feature when I log in. But it's worth it. It protects stuff, especially a cybersecurity company. I can't afford not to do that kind of thing, but neither can you, really. I'm sure you're watching this video. You probably have data that belongs to your customers that they would not want released, and you kind of have a duty to protect that data. They're trusting you to do business with you. You kind of owe them at least a certain amount of, best effort, best practices to protect their data. So automation with updates. Automatically updating things is better than manual because you're going to forget. But that's now kind of where you get into, if you're maybe 2 or 3 people large, you want to start talking, or maybe 5 people, you want to start talking to a company like ours, a managed service provider, an MSP they call them, about how you can maintain updates and firmware on your, and things like that on a regular basis, because it gets, there is only so much head to put a hat on, right? But that, of course, involves spending money. You could do that manually yourself to save in the beginning. At some point, it's probably probably one of the first places you want to spend a little money. They're usually not that bad if you just want someone to do some safety and health and hygiene kind of stuff on your computers, basic maintenance. That's usually fairly affordable. I've seen prices from $20 a month on average per machine. It's not that bad. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending who you're working with, and how aggressive they are in their pricing. And to give you a ballpark, it's not so bad, and that's probably worth spending money on. So moving on here, backups. Okay, now this I literally did a whole video on how to back up things properly to defend against ransomware. I'll give you the short version. The bad guys are going to work very hard to destroy your backups. You have to defend your backups first, because if you have backups, you're not going to pay the ransom, or not as likely to, right? Maybe you'll say, screw it, I can live without the data, or whatever, but you're not as likely to pay the data or pay the ransom for the data if you can recover from a backup. So if you have a common thing I've seen, people will plug a USB drive into the laptop. They're solopreneur, it's great, and then they just copy the data over. Well, first, biggest problem with that is you forget. Everybody does. If you're manually copying files, you're going to forget. It just happens. It's human nature. Your accountant, it's tax season, you're going to forget. It's your Halloween costume manufacturer. Okay, well, it's Halloween season. You're going to forget. You're busy. We all have busy seasons. So I don't like that for that reason. But if it's connected, even if you remember to copy the files and the bad guy gets a hold of your laptop, they're going to destroy that USB drive first. The first thing they're going to do. If you have it on a network-attached storage, you have it a little NAS in your office environment, they're going to look at your computer, even if you have backup software, and they'll look at the backup software, open it, and go, well, where's this backup pointing its data to? And they're going to destroy that data. Cloud backup is a good alternative to this because it's a whole new security boundary. You could potentially, and you should act on this, have different passwords and credentials. iDrive.com, real basic suggestion. iDrive.com. Pick your vendor. They're not the only one out there. I like them. They're cheap. They're $7 a month, and you get up to 5 terabytes of storage. Now, what happens is it'll copy the data on your laptop and push it up into the cloud. And the agent on the laptop has no control over this data. Your laptop can't get to the data. You can by logging into a cloud service as your account. So you want to make sure that you take all those same steps to protect your username and your password. Multi-factor authentication is key. And you don't want to use the same password on your iDrive account, if that's who you use, or whoever you're using, as you do on your email, or as you do in other services. The idea being that somebody breaks in your computer successfully, you don't want that to get them any closer to your backups. So you have to separate the two. I'm kind of enough on that. Again, I could talk for hours on good ways. You probably should talk to a company or watch our video on how to do that. So, but you think about backups, you could have things offline. You could take, if you had 4 USB hard drives and rotate them, that's good because they can't touch your computer, your hard drive remotely if it's offline, right? If it's in your closet, if it's at home, it's protected. But again, human error. Are you actually going to rotate? History has shown me that most people don't. It just doesn't end up happening. So I like cloud backup for that reason. It's simple. The solopreneur can go get an account from them, from Crash Plan, from there's a bunch of different vendors out there. I like iDrive because it's very affordable. The only downside is it doesn't back up applications. You have to think about what kind of data you're backing up. If you have an SQL application on your network, iDrive's not going to be able to back that up unless you pay for more services that can read SQL databases, things like that. If you have a fancy application, ask the vendor how to back up and find out the backups work. But if you're just a solopreneur and you have office documents and one laptop, iDrive's your thing. I think that's an easy way to go. Protecting sensitive data. We just touched on this a little bit. You need to separate your data. Assume you're going to get compromised. Maybe you have a line of business app in the cloud and you put all your client's information there. Okay, that's one spot. You should document that. Write up a plan. You should have a policy. We'll talk about policy in a minute. You should have a policy that says where sensitive information is allowed to live and it's not allowed to live anywhere else. And make sure that new hires, when you finally bring that first employee in or you bring that contractor to help you, they read this policy information, they understand it. And that way it's in one spot. So if someone ransomwares your laptop and maybe they do data exfiltration, they copy your entire hard drive to the cloud, if you don't put sensitive information anywhere but your cloud application and the cloud provider manages to defend the application, you've managed to protect that data. Even if they've managed to, say, get at your marketing plans or your email, other information, you take a hit. It's better to take a hit than, it's like losing a limb versus losing your head, right? It's still bad, but it's a lot better than if you've managed to take the time to protect it separately with additional layers, or you've restricted the attack surface so it's not in more than one place. You don't want to have a spreadsheet with your client information stored in your hard drive and have them logged into your app. If you make it a habit of not doing that, it's going to help you if you ever get breached. And again, things like policy are good to, if you do get breached and you have to notify your customers, do it by email. I believe a lot of the HIPAA regulation, I think there's other regulations where you kind of have to define ahead of time as part of a contract how you're allowed to notify them. Legal counsel can help you with that kind of thing, but that's a question to ask a lawyer. Hey, if I ever get cyber breached, can I make it? Is there any way I can make sure that my clients agree to let me email them instead of having to spend an expensive letter? If you got 500 clients, it's $500. If you got 1,000 clients, it's $1,000. If you got 20,000 clients, it's $20,000. It's important to do that early on and to build that over time. And then secure stuff. How do you get information between you and a vendor? Let's say you are working for the Department of Defense and you're a solopreneur. You've got a CNC machine in your garage. You're just starting out and you're making this one little widget for somebody that makes something else for somebody, so on and so forth. If you're 5 companies removed from the Department of Defense, they're still going to send you information that you have to protect. And how do you do that? How do you send the information back and forth? Sharefile.com is a site that will allow you to do that kind of stuff. There's a lot of ways to do that. You can encrypt your email. Email has TLS encryption built into it. A lot of vendors do. That's not proper encryption. You want end-to-end encryption is the term you're looking for. You want to look for vendors like that. We use Securance for that. It's a good product. We're a service reseller for them. But there's a lot of them out there. And you want to think about that. What's the difference between, you want to think about how you can get data between you and your partner. Because if it's sending over the wire, email is very vulnerable. There's old protocols like FTP. You don't want to use those. That's kind of questions you want to ask probably your IT provider. But that's something to be mindful of going forward. And documentation. We talked a little bit about that breach notification, why that's so important, how that can directly save you money. But there's all kinds of policy that can protect you. And, the lawyers out there will probably back me up on this. You want to have an acceptable use policy. So when you have that one employee that you just get in there and starts abusing your account for something, you can put the liability back on them. You want to have cyber insurance. You want to look into that. A lot of times a cyber insurance company will not give you cyber insurance until you fill out a questionnaire talking about your cyber and security practices. This is getting more and more common. This is compliance. This is another thing of compliance. A vendor's demanding that you do things a certain way. If you don't, then you're not going to be able to do business with them. Don't lie in those forms. Do not lie in those forms. It's very tempting to say, oh yeah, we have all this stuff, because they're not going to be able to check. But what happens, and they're not going to care. They won't check. Here's why. Because you're going to keep paying them, right? Policy starts, you pay them every month, they make money. But if you lied, and they could prove you lied, they don't have to pay the claim. All that time, you give them free money. They don't want to catch you. They want to set you up to lie and then catch you in a lie later when they don't pay out. So you're not doing yourself any favors by not filling out the cyber insurance questions accurately. Now, if they tell you, hey, we can't cover you, or yeah, we can cover you, but it's going to cost you 3 times as much, ask them what they want you to do. How much money will I save if I do X, Y, and Z? And then talk to an IT provider about doing X, Y, and Z. That's the way to do it. You can always say, hey, we told you the truth. You didn't like what we did. We're going to do this from now on, and then reapply. I think people are afraid of those questionnaires, and they shouldn't be. Incident response. We talked a little bit about this. You should have a written plan about what to do if you're breached. If something happens, you're not going to think clearly. You're going to be stressed out. You're going to be on the clock. You're going to move faster when you're breached. You're going to stop them in process. You're going to figure out how to talk to your customers and know what happens. You need a breach notification policy. Or maybe the incident isn't even a security incident. Maybe your building burned down. What are you going to do? Can you recover your data? Well, if you have cloud backup, we talked about, you can go to a new building, buy a new laptop, and download it. And then you can start getting your data and start working again. But you should think about that sort of thing. That this is more administrative. This is not tactical. What would you do if you lost everything? Could you continue to do business? You should have plans for that in your business plan. Planning is everything. If you don't, as they say, not planning to fail, not planning to succeed is planning to fail. So failure to plan is not a good thing. And that's very true of cybersecurity. And often you're doing these things anyway. If you look at them with a cybersecurity lens and you just think, whoa, how does this affect security? Just a little extra thought, you could change things and make different choices that really substantially improve your security posture without any extra time or money, or hardly any anyway. Employee training, I think, is the last one here on good policy and practices. Train your employees. You folks out there are not cybersecurity professionals, right? You're not going to know this stuff. It's not your fault. You can't expect people coming in cold to know anything about security. So when your new account receivable, your HR person gets an email saying, hey, I moved my bank and this is my new bank number, they're going to go, oh, well, I want to be helpful. I'll get this done right away. And then they just sent money to a hacker. Social engineering, that's not a technical thing. To be able to teach someone to say, hey, this is a scam that happens. This is how you respond to protect it. A lot of breaches could be protected just by teaching your employees. There's a company, KnowBe4. They're a great vendor. They do training programs written for the lay person, not for folks like me, folks like you watching this video. A lot of good content. Of course, we have that up here. Keep coming back to our channel, and we'll try and put, as we come across popular scams, we like to talk about them and show them to help people protect themselves. But end user training is great return on investment in terms of protecting yourself. There's a lot of common scams out there, and they all have common themes to them. And once your end users are exposed to that and aware of it, it starts getting them to think of security and then catch things that are suspicious and protect you and themselves and your customers. And I'm a huge fan of training. Train everybody. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just little bits can make a big difference. So that's our training. We've talked, I think, about compliance already. There's other compliance I haven't mentioned. There's the California CCPA. There's GDPR if you do business in Europe. Basically, what that means is if you have customer data and that customer says, I want you to forget me. We're not doing business anymore. Forget me. You have to be able to do that. This goes back to that data mapping I was telling you about. Where does your customers live? Where's their customer information at? You should know that. You should know where it is. And it shouldn't be anywhere else but where you say it's going to be in your policy. It's a policy thing, right? This is all thinking about. This is all about how you design your business process. This isn't even a technical thing. You can't go buy an antivirus software for that. You can't go buy a firewall to fix that. No, you have to plan. You have to figure out what the data is going to be because they might ask you to delete it and you're legally required to. If you do business in California, if you do business in Europe, you're under any of those jurisdictions, and a lot of other states are jumping in on this too. So pretty much you're going to have to be able to delete people's information from your database, which means you have to know where it is. Compliance for small business, man, there's all kinds of compliance that's growing. HIPAA, PCI, you don't want to store credit cards if you don't have to, because there's lots of things you have to do. If you're manufacturing stuff for the Department of Defense or somebody that does, down the chain, you have to follow NIST 800-171. You should ask your legal counsel and other peers in your industry about IT compliance that applies to you. You've got to know what it is, and then you got to re-up on it and learn it. So that's something to look out for. That's kind of our sweet spot. We do this compliance stuff. A lot of IT companies won't. They won't have no clue what any of that is. They'll think, it's kind of fun when you talk to another IT guy and they think you're talking gibberish, right? IT guys talk to end users and like, what did the guy just say? Is he speaking Chinese? Right? Well, you can do that. You can get to do that right back to your IT guy, because most IT guys don't know anything about compliance. You start talking about, GDPR and CCPA and HIPAA and NIST, and their eyes glaze over. It's kind of fun to push back on us, right? Anyway, that is really kind of the basics to go over. I know it's a bit of a long video, but it's just scratching the surface. There's so much we could talk about. I'm hoping the video gave you a seed of information to learn, so it tells you what kind of questions to ask and where to look for more information. Of course, we were always publishing information on our website and our YouTube channel to help customers learn more about this. Talk to all your peers, talk to your friends and peers in the industry about these kinds of things. Find out what they're doing. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you're in a networking group or a chamber of commerce, it's also a good resource to learn about the kind of regulations that apply to you. What kind of cybersecurity issues have they run into and dealt with? Of course, cybersecurity companies can help you too, but I know, we charge a certain amount of money, a certain kind of premium over a lot of other IT companies, because of the criticality of what we offer, especially the compliance stuff. And I know it's hard for a solopreneur, a brand new business to do, but I think if you pace yourself and you budget a little bit of help now and again, it can make a big difference. You don't have to go all in. You don't have to, hire someone full time or something. Follow a lot of these steps, especially when it comes to things like backups and how to recover from that, writing good policy, that sort of thing. Questions, comments. I know I talked very fast and I threw a ton of information here. I bet you there's a lot of people that a lot of the stuff went over their head. Put your questions in the comments on our channel. I want to answer them. I want to help out. That's what we're here for, to provide information so you guys get to know us, and we get to know you. And I always appreciate feedback as to the validity and of the topic at hand. So is this good information? Is this going to help you out? Are we talking the right thing? Or are we speaking your language? Let us know in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for your time, and stay safe out there.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has provided valuable information to you. Be sure to share this video with other small business owners to spread the word about the importance of cybersecurity. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you want more information about cybersecurity, visit us at www.cybervenger.com.